Mark. Get set. It's time for the Addict to Athlete podcast. Hey, everybody out there, Coach Blue Robinson here. I want to thank you all so much for downloading, sharing, and subscribing to the podcast. Greatly appreciate you doing so. Hey, as always, keep an eye on that website, addicttoathlete.org. You'll find backlog podcast information about the team, how to start chapters of the program in your community, and so much more. Hey, take a peek at our calendar. We have a lot of events coming up still in the summer that's left. We'd love you to be a part of it, specifically for our September Recovery 5K we have coming up. It's a proxy run where you run in honor of someone that may have lost their battle to addiction or who are currently struggling with addiction. You put their name on your bib, you run in their honor, and we don't forget who they were and who they are to you. So jump on the website. Registration will be open very soon. And if you have any questions, you can find all of our contact links within that page. Nonetheless, athletes, we've got a great guest in studio today, one that I'm excited to talk to because of her specific specialty and the things that I think she's going to be able to talk with us about today is some of the residual effects I find that we kind of are lacking on the other side of addiction. When we get into recovery, we have these feelings that start to come flowing back in. And I think that, Dr. B, you've got a great mindset when it comes to adversity and grief and all these kind of things. Welcome to the Addict to Athlete podcast. Please, if you don't mind, introduce yourself to our team. And welcome to the show.
My name's Christy Bundakamara, Dr. B. I am a psychiatric nurse practitioner with over 25 years of clinical experience. But it didn't prepare me for life, real life, and grief and loss. I've lost 3 children and my husband over the course of 20 years, so it didn't all happen at once. And in the midst of that, I was raising 6 kids and just everything, feeling the overwhelm, feeling grief, feeling trauma. I not only have the academic knowledge, but I've lived it and I'm still standing. So my brand is Mentally Strong. And I hope to be able to really talk about what is real mental strength, because I think we have some idea of mental strength being just this outward strength and not about the inside. And true mental strength is we are strong on the inside. And I can just imagine people who are struggling in this addiction, and I do treat addiction here in my clinic, that there's so much internal dialogue that is negative, that is beating you up. There's so much either stigma or misunderstanding about what addiction is. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're doing your absolute best to show up for yourself in life. And I hope you leave. Well, I know that you'll leave with some tools for sure.
Absolutely. And I think that's maybe a great launching point for the discussion today. And that's specifically the mindset of someone I know that comes through addiction on the other side. They remember, oh yeah, the reason why these addictions started in the first place was to suppress and push away these memories, the stuff that doesn't feel good. And now all of a sudden, you're waking up and you're like, I'm remembering, I'm feeling again. Let's jump into that because there's so many times I've worked with folks that have had like intense trauma in history. And, a lot of people on the outside looking in will see and think, well, it's a choice. We know that it's not, that there's a lot of contributing factors to this and that there's reasons why the escape works because it suppresses the memories and the feelings and the trauma. But what happens with your perspective when unresolved trauma and grief it doesn't get resolved? What's the outcome?
Can I back up just a little bit? And would you allow me to share my screen?
Please.
I know that a lot of people are listening. So this is one of the things that I start with when someone is struggling with addiction. Addiction is not the total problem, right? We have some people that will say this, this is a disease, it's genetic. And that could be a portion, although we have done the whole exomes of the gene. There's not one specific gene that points to addiction, but it does. But there are genes that are very specific to like how you metabolize dopamine, how your brain responds during stress, whether it's overactive, underactive, all of those things. So there is a genetic component, right? But then can you see this image with my little rocks?
Yeah. Yep.
So the next piece is environment. And that's what you're talking about. Like, was there trauma? Was there neglect and abandonment in early childhood? We know that our personalities are developed by age 7. And I know we want to push our childhood behind us and say, I'm not going to let it impact me. but it is impacting you. And so bringing awareness to that. And then we have learned behaviors. Maybe you grew up in an environment where a lot of people were using substances or some sort of maladaptive behavior to cope with life. And then maybe there's an untreated mental health condition. I can tell you that so many of my addicts, once we get sober, there's actually an underlying, bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety, something that they're self-medicating with whatever substance they're choosing.
Yes.
And then there's the biology of reward. So once your brain learns that this works, right? Because if the substance didn't work, you wouldn't be using it, right?
True.
So there's this biology of reward that you feel that dopamine hit, you get that reward, and it actually creates a new neural pathway in your brain.
Wow. Yeah.
And then the final thing is choice. Yes, it is kind of about choice, but if you haven't addressed these things underneath, it's really hard to make good choices. I have people who will come to me and they'll be like, I am so depressed. And one of the best things for depression is exercise, right? We know that you promote that, right? Like this increases all the neurotransmitters in our brain. It produces BDNF, which is like the thing that neurogenesis our brain. But when you're depressed, it is really hard to choose to get up and exercise, right? So when we look at this, there's a choice, but what are the factors that are making that choice really, really difficult?
I love it. I love it. And that's the thing. And that's, I think, listeners, what addiction tries to take away from you is that power of choice. We get to choose how we navigate through this stuff. And I love your model. I think that is absolutely spectacular. And it gets me thinking a little bit more about, the movement equals healing thing for me. I mean, when I was going through the process of beginning Addict to Athlete in 2011, and I was, getting the clients up and moving a little bit. They would start talking to me about all kinds of stuff outside as we were moving. And I'm like, why are you guys being so open and therapeutically bound out here? But in my awesome office, you guys are like brick walls. And, I thought I was discovering a new modality of therapy, but really it's EMDR therapy, right? It's kind of like just that natural movement, left, right brain stimulation and whatnot. And I think sometimes we almost believe that it can't be that simple at its core. Don't get me wrong, the process of it's challenging, but at the core, it's like when you move, when you engage, when you start moving towards something, literally and figuratively, stuff starts to move. And that's the one beautiful thing I've noticed about recreation, movement, EMDR, is that when we start pushing through and having like other ideas and thoughts and feelings about an old trauma response, it's almost like kind of scary, because you're like, wait a minute, am I really becoming okay with this? As we're navigating some of these things, do you find that some people hold on to these feelings and emotions longer than they should because of that secondary gain, or because of the fear of who am I without this?
I think it's we don't teach mental strength anywhere, right? Like we have this idea of what mental strength is. There's been a movement around, processing trauma and releasing trauma, but we don't really know how to do that. And let's say if a walk doesn't work, right? Why? And when I teach the mentally strong method, I teach like, can you think through your problems? Can you organize them? Not everything is trauma, right? Any event that has happened in your life that changes the way you see the world is trauma, right? So that could be what we call big T trauma, or it could be little things of, for example, when I was 10 months old, my biological father died, right? I think, okay, that's not grief. I didn't even know the guy, right?
Right.
But to a 10-month-old child, it changed the way I see the world, right? It shifted what appeared to be safety to not safe, right? Because then my mom was in, grief for a long time. There was, some, her like pulling away and things like that, going through her own journey, right?
Right.
And so even though I wouldn't consider that big T trauma, it changed my perception of the world. It changed my feeling of safety
Makes
and
sense.
what love is and those kinds of things. So those events are trauma, but how we respond and how we've adapted to them, we need to take a little bit more personal responsibility for. And also identifying grief. So as you can imagine, losing children is I
My
think the
heavens.
worst grief in the world, right?
I can't imagine. Yeah.
And if I were to go and I did go to some trauma therapists and things like that, and they would say, well, let's do EMDR to release this grief. That is not what grief is. Grief, this
No.
is my story. I am allowed to feel the pain of my children dying years to come.
Yes.
But the trauma associated with that, I need to separate, because oftentimes, and I teach this over and over and over again, because this is what is completely missing, is the grief and trauma needs to be separated, because right now it's enmeshed, right? And
Yeah.
grief is kind of your story, your badge of honor. You are allowed to say, I'm going to feel the pain of this grief forever. People who were, physically or sexually abused, like, they're being able to separate the grief of, yes, that is trauma, but how it changed you is grief. Like, you no longer feel safe around people like that, or you no longer feel safe in public places. You get triggered when there's fireworks, right? Like, your life changed and you get to grieve that. That's your story. But if we don't separate the trauma, it's going to eat us up on the inside.
Yeah.
Another thing that happens a lot in addiction is the negative self-talk and the dialogue underneath. That is our responsibility. When I was going through this horrible 10 years, from my first son died in a drowning accident, and then within a year, my son Reggie started having catastrophic epilepsy. He was in the hospital, almost dying every couple months over a 10-year period. And in the midst of that, I was already a psychiatric nurse practitioner. I knew all the right coping skills. I knew all of those things, right?
Yeah.
I've read all the self-development books. I'm the first one when a new one comes out, right? Positive psychology. But positive psychology only works for your negative self-talk.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for your trauma. It doesn't take away your trauma. It doesn't address your grief. It contributes to your addiction, but it is not your addiction. Your addiction is that complicated neurobiology thing that happened to you.
Right.
And, being able to separate it into the appropriate pieces instead of just white knuckling, trying to stay sober.
Yeah. And I love the eloquent way that that's described, specifically because when we try to lump that all together, it's like, I kind of look at it like in the frame of an athlete, like doing a triathlon, the swim, the bike, the run, but trying to do them all at once. Like, you can't. You have to separate this stuff. And I've never really looked at it that way, because you're right, because it looks like we want to tackle it all at once, but we really shouldn't. And we should probably do a better job at defining those different categories, because when we lump it up, we're going to miss it. And I've seen that in some of the folks I've worked with in past experiences. So I think that's a fantastic thing. What I would really love to know too about what happens specifically with some of the mothers that I work with, who have this feeling of guilt too. Like, I wasn't there. I missed out on, or I neglected this. When we look at substance abuse and the trauma and whatnot, and the cyclic type lifestyles that happen, their mothers and fathers before them, I work with so many now that are sick and tired of the guilt, but like don't know how to dump it when it comes to like, hey, you're a good mom. Look at look where you are right now. You're coming here in therapy. You're working these programs. You're showing up for your kids. Where's this guilt come from? And of all of those kind of like foundational feelings and emotions, why do you think guilt is such a plague with some of the folks that struggle with addictions and have challenging times seeing authentically who they are?
Yeah. Well, we often beat ourselves up, period. We want to be perfect. And then when we're not, we go through and beat ourselves up. But there's two pieces to this. There is the forgiveness and accountability, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't want to just say, oh, it's fine to have neglected your children and done these things, right? Like, there's a difference between guilt and shame and accountability. And so if you can shift that guilt and shame to accountability, yes, I made some mistakes and I am doing this, and this to try to mend those relationships. And I can tell you there are people listening that their children are still mad at them.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
and so that's where the guilt comes in, because they feel like, that my kid has a right to be mad at me. And that's true. That is taking accountability. But if we feed that, let's say it's that bad choice is a fire in your heart. And you can either put water, sand on it, or you can put gas on it. And when
Yeah.
you're sitting there thinking about the guilt and the negative talk and, I was such a bad mother, all you're doing is putting, fuel on a fire.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got to get control of our mind and begin to, I'm not saying all of a sudden you don't feel guilty. I'm
Right.
saying take a little bit of water, sand, put it on the fire, list all the positive things that you have tried to do. And this starts with yourself. Oftentimes we are trying to mend that relationship as evidence of forgiveness.
Right.
We have to forgive ourselves first and, begin to try to mend and work on that relationship. The guilt might come. Maybe your child is still young. Young kids forgive you easy, right? If you have
Yes, they
grown
do.
kids, they're
Yeah.
holding you accountable to everything. But young kids will
Mm-hmm.
forgive you quickly. But it's your own narrative. It's your own story of what did this 2 years of addiction do to those formative years. Like, we all have a story, and allowing your child to live out their story, teaching them how to identify the grief and the trauma and their internal story and dialogue, right? You
Yeah.
hear tons of stories of kids who become adults, same situation, and one, becomes the CEO of some big company, and one follows in the footsteps and becomes an addict themselves, right? How do we help our children, process and deal with their story, what happened to them?
Yeah.
But you have to forgive yourself. Otherwise, that guilt is going to eat you up inside.
Oh man. Absolutely. And it does, and I've seen that in so many like occasions that it's one of these things where if it goes unchecked, it can literally consume your complete and entire life. And I'm thinking,
Mm-hmm.
listeners, as you're hearing what Dr. B's talking about, I really hope that you're taking notes to this, because I look at it through this angle as well of like, not just recycling what we've learned through our experiences and stuff, but like when they step up to the plate and literally like demonstrate to themselves, the world, the people they love, that they're in active change. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
think you guys just take a stewardship check of where you are right now, because if you were still in the mindset of parenting as you were parented, you wouldn't be here. And so that
Right.
alone is a huge step, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
the
And
fear
I know there's
factor,
people listening that'll be like,
yeah,
yeah, but I've relapsed so many times and I might relapse again. And like, you can do it. And if you relapse, like, that's okay. Like, hold on to the days that you made the choices that you wanted to make.
mm-hmm.
I know AA is a big place where people feel safe in recovery. There's a couple things that are taught there that I don't like. The first one
Thank
is
you, Dr. B. This is why I love you. Please continue. Yeah.
the first thing is I'm powerless. That is a lie.
Oh, speaking
You
my
are
truth.
not powerless,
No.
right? You are not powerless. This is your story. You have to learn to think through it, organize, make choices, continue to make those little choices. I like the way, it's like, one day at a time, those choices. The other problem with AA is you relapse and you're starting over. And that is not biologically true, right?
No,
If
it's not.
you were sober for a year and you relapsed, you still have a year of sobriety.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens when you have this mindset that I'm starting over, the binge continues, right?
I love it. Yes,
Like you just
absolutely.
mentally, it's like, well, I already messed up, so I'm just going to go all in, right?
Yeah.
And that is very detrimental to the mindset of recovery.
Mm.
You count every sober day. And the third thing is that you're not always an addict. I understand
No,
that.
thank you.
Yeah, you're not always an addict. You can, and there are people 20 years in recovery who adamantly disagree with me.
Yeah, me too.
And I have not personally deeply struggled with an illegal substance or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
However, the science of psychology and positive psychology and what we need to do with grief and trauma and addiction in our brain, it is not true.
No,
At least our brain regenerates every 7 years. So at least in 7 years, you have a completely new brain.
brilliant.
But again, I think 1 year sober is kind of that great mark of,
Mm-hmm.
I can do this. This is real. And if you relapse, make it just a moment of weakness, not a binge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We call it the acronym of SLIP. Sobriety
Mm-hmm.
lost its purpose. All you do is reestablish your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the title of the group that we started here. Addict
Yeah.
to athlete means you're leaving the addict behind and you're moving into an athlete and then to a son and a father and a husband and an artist and a scholar, right? You just keep going.
Yeah.
And even the symbolism of the Roman numeral 2. I love what you said.
Mm-hmm.
The Romans don't identify with 0. And so
Mm-hmm.
there's always one that is you, right? You attach that to something else, whether it be spirituality, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That becomes the foundation now to build on. When you have 2 columns, you can build up from that.
Yeah.
And I love that mindset. You're absolutely right. We are not powerless over this. I think the moment that we choose to change and we choose to do something different is the definition of power.
Yeah.
And you're right. That label of addict, not appropriate. Like I don't let my clients call themselves addicts. It's a negative attribute because you know how
Yeah.
powerful the I am statement is. If you
Yes.
have I am
Yes.
an addict, then that's the negative context. And that messes with our minds, doesn't it? These
Right.
negative labels.
Yeah. Absolutely. You are who you think you are. For sure.
100%. Yeah. And the cool thing about, I think, your work and the things that you're diving into, if you don't mind me getting a little personal, is you've suffered what I would describe as like a lot of individuals I've worked with, myself included. We call it the trauma threshold. It's would my sobriety last if this happened?
Yeah.
And you probably wouldn't be surprised how many people say, hey, I can stay sober and be in recovery unless I lose a child.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt that way for many years. In fact, I don't like talking about it because I don't want, knock on wood, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But on the same breath, with you and some of the other people I've met that have suffered what I would say my trauma threshold, you're still here.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking some personal questions about that, how in the world do you begin to even fathom and cope with someone's trauma threshold like mine that you've experienced? Because my heavens, you've come through a significant amount of your fair share of emotional threshold pushing. How
It
in the
was
world have you gotten here?
definitely a process, right?
Yeah.
I've always been what we call resilient. I have grit, I'll push through. And we often tell our story of I'm a survivor.
Mm-hmm.
And I want those of you that are listening that think I'm a survivor, I want you to level that up even more. Is I am mentally strong regardless, right?
Brilliant.
Because a survivor is that grit, right? Like, and grit is a great coping skill, but you have a capacity limit to it.
Yes.
And after my third child, definitely hit that capacity limit. My first child dying in a drowning accident, I didn't have time to grieve that properly. And I did the things that, as a person, a psychiatric nurse practitioner, I knew I should do. But I didn't really heal deeply because I didn't have time, because my son started having catastrophic epilepsy. And then I was in fight or flight for 10 years trying to save his life. In the midst of that is when I developed what I call the mentally strong method, because nothing was there for me, not my academic knowledge, not my colleagues who had just as much or more education than me,
Right.
and not any of these self-development gurus had never been through this real trauma. And so it took 10 years, but over the course of the 10 years, I developed what I now call the mentally strong method.
Beautiful.
And when my son died, Reggie, I knew I had to share it with people. And so it was giving me that purpose. And even though obviously his death is very difficult, I was grieving for 10 years because his life was trauma, right? Every couple months he's in the hospital, in the ICU. They're trying to put him on hospice. We're traveling around the world trying to fight this rare neurodegenerative condition. And so there was a tiny bit of relief of he's not in pain anymore, right?
Yeah.
And so I was able to keep that purpose piece going, right? And I started Mentally Strong. I started teaching on grief all around the world. And then my daughter dies in her sleep, like unexpected. She died of sudden, unexpected death in epilepsy. And like that, like her life was not traumatic. She had never spent the night in the hospital. Her seizures were well controlled. Like there was no indication I was going to lose my daughter. In that moment, I knew that was either going to break me or this was going to be something big, because there was no way that, like I could do this by myself. Right.
No kidding.
And the Mentally Strong method became my safety net. And this is why I'm so adamant about teaching this as a foundational tool for mental strength, because we think, there's people now, if the audience were to think, who is the poster child for mental strength? Many people would think like David Goggins, right?
Yeah.
I don't know that this man is super healthy, right? I don't know him personally, so I'm not going to make judgment.
Well, but I'll tell you one thing. Coach Blue beat him once in a race on a bike. So, yeah. But that was in 2005. I don't think I could do that, but you're right. You're right.
Yeah. But that's how we think. And yes, I love that you're using movement and athleticism to, release trauma and, find your purpose and know who you are and be in control of your body. But we are physical, mental, emotional, spiritual beings. 100%. And there's more to that. And so mental strength really comes from within. And when I lost my daughter, and this is all in my documentary, I didn't know how this was going to go, but I knew I needed to film it, because if I was able to come out the other side of this, it was going to help people. And so I spent the next year, and specifically 45 days in active grief, filming the whole thing.
Wow.
And really being raw and vulnerable. There were times, you can imagine losing 3 of your children, all of your biological children. I've since lost my husband, who had the same disorder as they did. And you can imagine that you get to a point where you're like, I would rather be with them, regardless of what you believe spiritually.
You're right.
And there are moments like that and it becomes spiritual purpose, whether you believe in a singular God or a universe, or taking the time to know who you are spiritually is part of that purpose. Like what, and I think many times when we're at that place of, I don't want to be in this world, we need to hold on to purpose.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it boggles my mind that way. I know of one other individual that I've had the privilege of getting to know that has had, 3 children passed because of addiction. And it's mind boggling, like to think, like, well, what in the world? And I asked her something and she gave me the most eloquent answer. And I'd love to know what you think of this. And I said, if you had to do it again, would you? And she sat there for a moment. She said, over and over, Blue. And
Yeah.
it gets me emotional because I'm thinking,
Yeah.
you would do all that again knowing the outcome. And I think sometimes when you get that strong mind, it's because, yeah, the situation was very unpleasant, but the residuals of what you've learned and what you've gained and what you're doing with it, I think also is very important to the fellow man, so to speak, right? Like, how do you wrap your
Yeah.
head around that? Like,
Yeah. And I
yeah,
can tell you,
you still have the capacity to love, correct? I mean,
yeah.
it's not like your door's shut, obviously.
Yeah. And this was really part of my spiritual journey as well. I prior to all of this trauma, I I would have said I still believe I'm a Christian, but I was more of the traditional church religion type Christian,
Mm-hmm.
and just really kind of anything that was connecting with the spiritual world was not. I was taught that that wasn't safe.
Right.
And after my son died, I'm in my room and crying out to God, and my son came to me and he said, "Mama, you think you're so smart. You have
Oh.
no idea." And that was the first moment of a different kind of spiritual awakening for me. And when my daughter passed, I'm like, I have to connect. Like, I have to feel that. And in one of my meditation sessions, I was actually out of the country doing ayahuasca,
Mm-hmm.
and it didn't work for me, by the way. I'm not,
Yeah.
however, I was there vomiting, right? And in my mind, I'm like, I did this to myself, talking about like I came here to this foreign country all by myself. I'm vomiting, like
Mm-hmm.
I did this to myself. I chose to do this. And in the days after, as I was, meditating, I really felt the same thing that your other person was
Mm-hmm.
talking about, of
Yeah.
if God would have come to me before coming to this earth and said to me, okay, this is what, you're signing up for, which some people believe we actually do, agree and
Mm-hmm.
sign contracts before we come down here.
Yeah.
But even if whether that's true or not true, if it were true, would I say yes? And the answer is yes. And
Wow.
that was a pivotal moment of, yes, I would choose this. As hard as it was, it's mine. I have a connection, a love, a growth that has has changed me and is going to allow me to have an impact on thousands of people.
Mm. So
Yeah.
I hear that, and I think there's a book I read years ago about a guy named Michael Collins, and no one really remembers Mr. Collins. Everyone remembers Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong, the guys who jumped on the moon. But Michael was up there orbiting, in the capsule around the moon. And the one thing that he said that I'll never forget that just hit me profoundly, he said when they both left the capsule to go to the moon and get all the glory, and he kept going, when he goes behind the dark side of the moon, everything gets cut off because it's all radio wave based, right?
Mm.
And he said it was in that absolute darkness, he said, that for the first time I felt genuine loneliness. He said he had the epiphany, I'm the furthest human being from anybody else that's ever walked the face of this earth, whether we came out of the ocean or we were, dropped in the Garden of Eden. No human's ever been as far away from humans as he has. And he said that loneliness was almost like terrifying to him.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he popped out the other side and got the signal back, it was a sign of relief. I can't imagine like that loneliness, but I can also understand like, how do you cope with that? Because at some point you came home and it was just you.
Yeah.
How did you navigate the loneliness? How do we teach the clients like what that is? Because you can be in a sea of people and still
Yeah.
feel lonely.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and I want to put it back on some accountability of
mm-hmm.
there is the story that you're telling yourself is what you're going to believe. And the more you tell that story, so could, those of you listening, if you could take that narrative of, in a room of people, I'm alone, I have no one who cares for me, and rewrite that story. Could you rewrite that story? And for me, the way I've rewritten the story, and I live alone. My husband's gone. My other children are grown. They're in their 30s. And so I come home alone every night. And in, intimate moments, there's not that person either, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I can rewrite that story and say, I was blessed to have 26 years of marriage, right? Many people don't even have that.
Yeah.
How can you rewrite the story of loneliness is somewhat of a choice? I know a lot of people who will say, oh, I have friends that would do things with me, but I don't want to ask. That is your choice. And this is why when we do the mentally strong method, we put these things in behaviors and choices. You can't complain about your choices. It's okay to make those choices.
Yeah.
But and making sure that you're making choices that are actually aligned with what you want. And this is the last part of the mentally strong method, in that who do you want to be? And what choices do you need to make? And I'm not talking just career. I'm talking person,
Yeah.
mother, what, and then making choices of what that person does.
Right.
Right. And I'm sure you talk about this a lot in your program
Mm-hmm.
of like, what does that mother who's a good mother do? Right.
Yeah.
Regardless of the response. So I have one of my adult children who not really talking to me right now. But I
Mm-hmm.
reach out to her like once a month, send a
Mm-hmm.
text, thinking about you, hope you're doing well. And she'll
Yeah.
call every once in a while, right? I can't change how she's thinking, what she's doing, her behaviors and choices, especially for your adult children.
Right.
They're on their own journey. And yes, we can take accountability if we've done pieces of that, but it is also our responsibility to forgive ourselves, and it's their responsibility to forgive us. And if they don't, we still have to be okay with ourselves. We still have to forgive ourselves.
Yes. Yes. Very true.
Yeah.
And I think that that listeners, when we hear that too, it kind of reminds, and I say this a lot, like the troops, they're not coming to rescue you. You are the troops. And that's a hard one, because when we get that classic victim mode, which is a dangerous place to stay, right? If you're a victim to something, it's a temporary state.
Yep.
But the victim mentality says, but look at all the attention you're getting. Look at all the, all the remorse and the justifications that you can use. Not a good place to be, I would imagine. Correct? Like you want to get out of that as fast as you can, wouldn't you say?
Well, and this is the dichotomy that's happening right now with addiction. We have people who say it's a disease and there's nothing you can do about it, but treat it. And I do think you should treat.
Yeah.
I'm a supporter of medication assisted therapy.
Absolutely.
I'm a supporter of treating your mental health with medications and things like that. But then you have the other side that's like, oh, it's just a choice. You're choosing this, you're choosing this. And the reality is everybody's story is different.
Yeah.
Everybody has different griefs and traumas and choices and how they're responding to that. The internal dialogue in everyone is different.
Yeah.
And that is the one thing that we have total control of is our internal dialogue.
Yes.
And let's rewrite the story, not falsely. Like, and this is the thing that a lot of times people are like, they're probably listening going, yeah, but I did do all these things and I am embarrassed of these things. And, I have this problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you are responsible for changing the narrative to a positive, realistic. I don't want you to say, "Oh, I was such a good mom." I don't want you to be delusional, right?
Yeah.
I don't want you, you need to take accountability, but also forgive and change the story, change the narrative in yourself. And hopefully the people around you that you love will see that and forgive as well. But oftentimes we're looking for that external forgiveness before we'll stop the negative dialogue. And we have to stop the negative dialogue first.
And if that's the case, would they even recognize it when that love is being offered, right? To learn how to love someone's one thing, but learning how to be loved by someone's quite another.
Woo!
And so I know people
Yeah.
that get in that situation are afraid because if you love, you have the potential to be hurt. That's part of the game. That's part of the plan, I guess, right? So
Yeah.
isn't that a challenge, like allowing yourself to be loved and to love again?
Well, to receive love is really hard. And this is, I think, where the trauma comes in, right? Many people who have experienced trauma in early childhood have qualities of what we call reactive attachment, where they can't actually attach and feel love, or they feel like they can't.
Right.
And their decisions like push people away instead of receive the love. But again, it starts with ourselves. Do you love yourself? And if you're listening, you're being completely honest with yourself. If you haven't done the work, the answer is probably no.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
And I went through this whole journey of a year of like, I think I love myself, but I don't even know myself. When you are wrapped up in your own life, whether it's addiction, raising kids, your job, your career, what actually fills your cup? What do you like? And you can't love someone you don't know or like. And so when we talk about the negative dialogue, if you don't even like yourself, you can't love yourself. So let's back up. Let's, get to know yourself, not the bad stuff. Take accountability for that and move on, right? But who are you at the core? What are your core values? What is important to you? Begin to like yourself. So you have to know yourself and then like yourself, and then you can learn to love yourself.
My heavens. It's a beautiful blueprint. Like it really is. And I think sometimes we get in a mindset of if I just give all my love out, then that's enough and vicariously I'll receive. But I don't think that's always the case. You can give too much and have nothing in the reserve, right? Like you need to make sure you keep enough for you as well. So listeners, that's a big deal. Tell me about this. Tell me about your program though. Tell me about your method, because I think it's a beautiful one. I've done a little bit of research on it, and it resonates with me, and it's in line with what Addict to Athlete teaches. How did you come up with this, and how did you start to apply it?
It was in the midst of nobody being able to help me that I just began pulling in all of my knowledge and figuring out what works. And there are so many things out there that can help, right? You talked about EMDR earlier. But if you don't know why you're doing it, if you think you can go into an EMDR session and everything is going to be healed
magically,
that's not how it works, right? It will take apart your trauma and help you start processing that trauma. Trauma needs to move out of the body. And that's why I love what you're doing, Addict to Athlete, .org, go to the website, get involved, start the program. It allows for the movement of the trauma out of the body, any kind of movement. And it doesn't have to be, a major weightlifter or, a triathlon runner. It could just be walking, right? And so getting moving that out of the body. But the mentally strong method can be put down into 3 words: think, organize, choose. And if you can think efficiently, you are producing clarity. Okay. We all think that we know how to think, but we often are ruminating, right? We're just, right? So if you can produce clarity when you're thinking, and I do that through a thought map, and if you're open to it, I will share in like do it on you, so that because I'd love to give your listeners an exclusive offer of like a step-by-step how to do the thought map and a discovery call to learn more about our programs.
Absolutely.
So the thought map is this huge aha moment of you can get all of your thoughts down on one piece of paper, and be able to see those patterns. So if you're willing to be vulnerable, we'll just do it on you real quick verbally. Okay. So what is one thought that you maybe continue to struggle with, anxiety, self-worth, what would be one thought that kind of keeps coming up for you?
I'll tell you, I got raked across the coals by my athletes in my own group last week because of this, and it's my diet and nutrition. Like my thoughts are, I've got to have it fast, I got to have it quick, so I'll burn it off during my run, and I know that's not going to happen. And so my
Okay.
thought is, like, I just need it quick and fast, and I'll eat whatever I want, and I'll burn it off later.
Okay. So
Not a
like immediate gratification.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And when you catch yourself doing that, what kind of things are going on in your life?
Stress,
Mm-hmm.
work schedule, time, making sure that I'm there for the people that I've scheduled with, time
Mm-hmm.
urgency, things like that. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what are the consequences of that choice?
I haven't been as active as I want to be. I always make great excuses at night on why I don't have to or why I can't because of
Mm-hmm.
that lack of time. So yeah,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
justifications.
What about in your past? What other has there been immediate gratification around?
Well, in my own addiction to take care of how I feel right now. Like if I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to feel happy, I can go drink. If I want to feel happy, I'll go use some kind of stimulant. So
Mm-hmm.
instant gratification. Yeah. Like
Right.
I'll
Right.
dictate my own mood. I'll bring it on board.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And then what about in your childhood? Do you remember the
100.
first time you needed like that instant gratification?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And a lot of it was, I would love to have attention from my mom, like
Okay.
she never gave it to us, but I was always yearning for it.
Mm-hmm. And how did it feel when you did get that attention from your mom?
Oh, like I was the champion of the world. Like it felt
Mm-hmm.
so good that she saw me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you see the pattern going on here?
I do. Oh yeah, I do.
And then the last question is, how does this impact your spiritual relationship?
Yeah, there's been a lot of, do I measure up? Am I doing enough? Is God happy with me? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Being
Mm-hmm.
unsure on how He feels about Blue
Mm-hmm.
and what Blue does for his fellow man, so to speak. Yeah, am I
Mm-hmm.
doing enough?
Yeah. Yeah. And did you ever feel like that with mom?
100%.
Right.
I mean, 1,000%, Dr. B.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then and and so the stress is the trigger to this deep wound,
Mm-hmm.
right? Of not measuring
Yeah.
up, right?
Yeah.
And so if we were sitting together, we would go deeper and we would, put in all the
Mm.
factors and really pull out a lot of stuff. But even in this quick session, I would take through the organization and we have a core wound that is, not measuring up. We feel like we're not measuring up,
Yep.
and a behavior and choice of immediate gratification. And you've obviously done the work around this, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And, but you can see, especially those that are listening that are new in their recovery, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you just knew what was behind that immediate gratification, it makes it easier to make the right choice.
You're right.
Because when we're just white knuckling, trying to be sober because we know we don't want the consequences of using, which is often what is, driving us to sobriety is the consequences. But what got us there, right? And
Yeah.
it is a natural is probably the wrong word, but a biological response to your life story that got you where you
Mm.
are, right?
That's
So,
intense.
back to that, initial, maybe a little bit of genetics, some learned behaviors, some
Mm-hmm.
environment, maybe there is a mental health thing that needs to be addressed, right? It's not just about your choice, although
Man.
your choice is important, right?
Yeah.
That choice is important, and hopefully that's going to drive the momentum. But when I do the
Jeez.
mentally strong method, this momentum is a flywheel. And I don't know if you're familiar with a flywheel, but we talk
Oh
about it a
yeah.
lot in business,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
Like if you can get a momentum of think, organize, choose, and you begin to do that over and over again, it gets easier. It becomes second nature. It is momentum.
I
And
love
so
it.
this is mental strength, like knowing how to deal with
Hmm.
all this stuff. It's
Yeah.
not, and so I'm not putting any other like modality off, right? All of the
No.
modalities have their place. But if the consumer doesn't know what the place is, right? They go to a therapist and they say they want the therapist to help them, right? Fix me.
Yeah.
And the therapist has some tools and they're trying to share their tools. But if you don't know why you're doing it, you're not able to organize it in your brain. You feel like you're spinning your wheels. I mean, is
Beautiful.
anybody listening thinking, I've
Hmm.
been to therapy, they don't get it. And this is where
Yeah.
you often, and I'll fight um, my patients who are addicts because they'll say,
Hmm.
oh, only an addict can help me. And
Oh,
I'm like, no,
no.
not true.
True. Not
um,
true.
I I can help you, and addiction is the way you're manifesting your story, but
Yes.
it is not who you are.
No.
It's,
No.
and so we can work
I
underneath
love it.
that. Um, and so, yeah, I would love to give
I love that.
listeners this step by step how to do the thought map. It's like 20 years of journaling in 20 minutes. You get it all out there.
Oh my
You're able
gosh.
to
Yes.
look and meditate on it, and you get to see these aha moments like you just had. Like, oh, this immediate gratification actually goes all the way back to my relationship with God of not feeling like I'm not measuring up, and my mom.
Dr. B, I thought I had all this figured out, but no, seriously. Like, I mean, I'm who heals the healer. I'm like,
Mm,
what
yeah,
the heck? I should know this stuff. But when you put it into
yeah,
that context, I'm like, dang it, I'm still falling into that. And I'm like, that's exactly the core of it.
yeah,
And I think that you're absolutely right. It's a very beautiful, simple, yet deep and powerful, I
yeah.
guess, like exercise to get down to what's driving it.
Yeah, and I do think that that is my purpose, like healing, helping heal the
Mm-hmm.
healer, right?
Thank Yeah.
Because I had all that academic knowledge. I should have known,
Mm-hmm.
but the reality is the knowledge wasn't out there. I,
Right.
and I had to live it and it not work for me to be able to create this mentally strong method. And
Mm-hmm.
I work with high performers, and there's lots of high performers listening that,
Yep.
are secretly battling this addiction. This is, common knowledge in the high performing world, right?
Mm-hmm.
That, often we get to that place because we've used substances to get us there, right?
Right.
And so being able to get to the core and not have to fall apart. That's the other thing. People are afraid to address these things because they're falling apart. There's listeners right now that have been listening to your podcast, haven't bought your program. They're just like, I can't tell anybody. I'm going to
Yeah.
do this on my own, right? I'm
Yep.
going to be so, and maybe you can do it. I mean, I had to do it on my own, but
Yeah.
there are resources there. You don't have to fall apart. And this is what I love about the mentally strong method. Throughout my whole grief, even in those points where I really felt suicidal, I was running a multi-million dollar business. I was showing up for other people. I was doing the work. And so you don't have to fall apart in order to heal.
I love that. I love that more than anything.
Yeah.
And to just maybe capstone what you said about, not having to have addictions in your history to help people.
Mm-hmm.
I wholeheartedly believe that because I usually tell clients that go down that path, that kind of, play that card, like that the people that don't have addictions, they actually are probably better at doing this than the people that did, simply because they went through the same traumas that we did, only they chose a
Mm-hmm.
different way to cope. Why don't we learn from that? So,
Mm-hmm.
there's so many things that I've read about you that now getting to speak to you are so in line with the principles that we teach at Addict to Athlete. I know for a fact that you'll get quite a few of our listeners reaching out. How do they find you? Like
Yeah.
where can
So
we
I
look
have
at?
this exclusive offer. It is at athlete.mentallystrong.com. And that is just for your listeners,
Perfect.
athlete.mentallystrong.com. And you'll be able to download the thought map and the complete instructions for the thought map, and then book a call to find out how we can help.
Beautiful. Listeners, you've all been well fed. Dr. B, we're going to put all that in the show notes in the description. So make sure you guys head back over to that page once you're done listening. Let's get in contact with Dr. B. She's got a great program, one that you've heard, listeners, coincides and aligns perfectly with the principles that we teach here on Addict to Athlete. So brace yourself for impact, Dr. B, because you're going to have a lot of people reaching out. I can almost guarantee it. And I hope that we haven't scared you away and you want to come back and do another episode.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we could dive deep specifically into what do we do with the trauma? What do we do with the grief?
Absolutely. Yeah. Once it's discovered. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, then bank on that fact then, because we do get lots of people that reach out after we have good guests like you. So, listeners, again, it'll all be in the show notes. Make sure you check that out. Stay close to the website. And once you've jumped onto Dr. B's page and download the map, let me know, because I'd love to know how you're working on it and through it, because now I've got work to do, because I'm like, wait a minute, that's still a bubbling effect over here. So I appreciate you running me like through the brief part of that. But again, listeners, share this podcast with anyone that you feel may be in need of the knowledge that we've been able to discuss in such a small amount of time. And we'd love to hear more from you through the socials. So keep an eye on the webpage, addicttoathlete.org, for more information, because athletes, the goal is to turn your mess into your message.